今日から一番たくましいのだ。お待たせしました。すごいやつ。今日から一番かっこいいのだ。バリバリ最強ナンバーワン。
Hi, welcome to Graphic Descriptions. Today we're going to be looking at Get Jiro, a graphic novel written by Anthony Bourdain. It's basically a story of what happened to a sushi chef owner when someone comes in and asks for a California roll. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. The story was co-written by Anthony Bourdain and Joel Rose, and the art was done by Langdon Foss. Most people are going to know Anthony Bourdain from a Cook's Tour from the Food Network and No Reservations from the Travel Channel. But what people don't realize is that he's a novelist for novels such as Cooking Confidential, and apparently he's also a very big comic book fan. The story takes place in a world where everything is cooking. There's no longer any music, film, sports, or any other culture. Just cooking. Chefs are now the equivalent of mob bosses, or in the case of the story, warlords or shoguns would probably be a better term. Before I begin, let me just say there's a chance that there could be some spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. And here's how our story begins. One day, several patrons come into Jiro's restaurant, and one unfortunately asks for a California roll. Jiro responds to this by lopping off the guy's head, and a series of events occurs after that. This event puts him on the radar of two competing chefs and restaurants. And from there, there's ridiculous over-the-top violence and a healthy dash of dark comedy. So let's take a look at the good and the bad. First, the art. The art is done by Langdon Foss. I've never seen his work before, but I'm going to be sure to take a look for it in the future. He has an interesting art style. If you've ever heard of Jeff Darrow, in the 90s he was a collaborator with Frank Miller. And if you've ever seen Hard Boiled or Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, they did that. And it's ironic because Rusty the Boy Robot was eventually turned into a Fox Saturday morning show. But let's not get off topic. His art style has a grittiness but a very clean line on the outside and a good detail on the inside. It's kind of tough to explain, but there's a high amount of detail in it, but it's not overdone. Doesn't look rushed, but it does have a heavy dose of grittiness in it. One negative I have about it, though, is sometimes when he draws characters' faces, their expressions don't match the dialogue. One positive, though, is he is able to draw characters with different faces, and that's a problem a lot of artists nowadays have. They usually draw a character with the same body type and same facial features. He doesn't. Everyone looks different. As for the writing, I really didn't have that much trouble with it, but I did have one possible issue. It seemed that there were times that it was too inside baseball. What I mean by that is there's several references about types of cooking and knives, and it seems like the writer finds it more interesting than the reader would. I mean, I found it okay, but another reader might find it boring or even tedious. Another negative I have about the writing is sometimes the writing explains what just happened even though the art showed what happened. It's not a case of show and don't tell. It's more like a case of show and tell at the same time in the same scene. Let me give you an example. There's a scene in the graphic novel where Jiro clearly chops off a guy's arm off, and all you see is the bone there, and several of the guy's thug's friends discuss what happened and how it happened and everything. They didn't have to do that because we've already seen it with the art. It just became redundant. Having said that, I did enjoy the dark humor that goes through the entire story. Here's an example. A customer, while eating some sushi, gets his head lopped off, and we see the head on the ground a little bit later on with a giant smile on his face. And another time, there's some thugs, while they're beating up a guy, they let him go when they find out that he has reservations at a really popular restaurant. A restaurant that some of them's been waiting for reservations for about 3 years. Also, that reminds me, it's also a little funny because it looks like in this world, people would literally kill another person in order to get into a restaurant, or they would kill themselves because they couldn't get reservations into a restaurant. Oh yeah, and just a couple more things before I go. We never learn Jiro's full name and or his backstory completely. We've got an idea what it entails, but the story never actually tells us completely. Also, let me just say, the story ends possibly the same way it began. Despite the issues I did have with this graphic novel, I did enjoy it, and you should check it out. It was put out in 2012 by DC Comics under the Vertigo label, so it should still be in print. I'm not sure, however, if there's a trade paperback. The version I got was the hardcover. And with that, thank you for listening. Please subscribe, and goodbye.